Welcome to the USD Project. This is the next podcast, and we're having the discussion today about the today's topic is going to be about the strategic discussions between the political left and the political right. And the USD Project makes a very big space for the political left for us to have all these discussions on really long term important discussions of what's going to happen. They'll have big impacts to citizens, and the heart of it will be about the US dollar, about cryptocurrencies, about the ability to fund social programs, about the sustainability of a various number set of projects. So we'll go through this, and the way the USD Project podcast works is we'll be shaping the visuals during this podcast, and we will end up having people attending, and we have this as a live podcast every Wednesday at 9:30 Pacific time, in 9:30 in the morning. So the way it works is people come in, tune in, and they go watch the podcast live, and they can go tweet, and you can go see on the screen here, if and when you do tweet, your tweets will go show up in our stream, and that we're on the USDproject.com. So with this, so you can tweet us at the USDproject.com. With this, we're going to go through this to have discussions on the strategic discussions economically. So anyone passionate about economics. And then over here, if you look at cryptocurrencies, will end up changing things, whether we keep US dollar or things I have to adjust, and there's US dollar versus cryptocurrencies. It'll impact all of these discussions, and we want to invite in people to have the deepest strategic discussions. So social programs, the sustaining of them economically long term, protecting workers, return to Social Security's fund money, because that's been taken out, and there's IOUs there. And then there's workers that'll be hurt by being forced pay decreases. When inflation increases, then suddenly that causes pay decreases. So it'll be protecting the military's retirement fund and protecting the U.S. federal workers' retirement fund. Both of those, the money's gone out the back door. So they worked hard, money's been taken from their paycheck or compensation, and it would go in the fund and go out the back door in IOUs, and so we need to go and protect that. So in this today's discussion, and the way the USD project works overall, is we'll have the political left and political right, and they'll have great spaces to go have those debates. And so the USD project very specifically is going to have a very big space for the political left to dive into all the things that we all care about, and have that discussed, and then make sure the debate can kind of traverse all those issues. So the contention point that's going to be happening is there's the US dollar, and the US dollar, and the ability to print money, and that money funds deficits, it funds social services, when Social Security and Medicare are the far biggest use of the U.S. expenses, and the future social programs will end up being very similar to that. They end up being paid for by the deficit, by the money printing, by new treasury bonds being issued, and that funding this in a big way. With over here, I didn't update this text right here. It is cryptocurrencies. And so what's happening here between these is there's a contention point between these. And so first we're going to go tour and meet people who work hard in this nation. And so we take somebody and just go pin down a salary of say $41,000 a year. So they worked hard to go work up to where they're at. They love their job. It utilizes their skills. So there's a big impact if they had to try to leave. And so we'll kind of look at a 11-year period here. And with this, what we're discussing here will be what happens here is let's see, with this 11-year period, we'll be kind of analyzing what the impact of inflation will be. And so I'll shrink the screen a little bit here. So with this, if you look at how inflation happens, as things can happen in the future, and we'll discuss these in the USD project, inflation will greatly increase, and we'll go through why and have debates. And with that inflation, if we really think about protecting the worker, they have their salary at $41,000 a year, their expenses every month to pay for rent and everything else is eating up most of their expenses, pretty much all their expenses. So if you have 9% inflation, actually 6% inflation higher than whatever the current inflation is, over 11-year period, what you're dealing with is they still have their same salary, but their living costs have gone much higher. So there's a few jobs that are in such demand they can force their employers to match extremely high inflation. But in a very stressful economy of high inflation, for most jobs, the U.S. government will just not. Most companies will just really make the workers kind of eat things on their backs. So we'll kind of start to go through these topics here, and so let's go line up some more topics here. So we went through, and what we just talked about here were protecting workers, and with this specifically here by being hurt by the forced inflation. So the USD Project, we're going to have a lot of discussions. We want people to tweet. We want them to, over time, they can be invited into the podcast, and we want to hear your opinions. We're going to have a wiki, so we're going to have a number of things we want to go work out. What will happen by what dates. We're going to be modeling the future. And so what will happen and what will be kind of stressful events. And then we want your opinions on helping building out the wiki and just making sure it's all kind of tuned well. So let's come over on to the next issues here. So taxes are too high for citizens. So workers pay 83% of taxes. So if you look at the revenue of the U.S. government, it's about 83% of all the revenues paid by workers on not just their income tax on April 15th of every year, but there's three layers. That's one layer. The second layer is when workers are paid, the employer has to pay on the employer contribution that then gets taken away on a per employee basis from the employer paying in a payroll for that employee. And then secondly, the employee then has more money taken away from their paycheck, and you see that in the pay stub. But the employer side of that's hidden from the employee. And so that's another aspect right here. So if you look at wealthy, capital gains is far, far less than, 7%. 7% includes other factors. So if you look at business and corporate taxes, that is about 10% of the U.S. So this aspect right here were numbers, and we'll go through and have debates on these things. So the capital gains is far, far less. This includes a whole bunch of other non-capital gains. So the wealthy are paying on capital gains are a very small amount, and corporations are a very small amount. And it used to be workers would pay a far smaller amount, and corporations, these two would be far higher, but it's become a pretty big problem in this nation. So we'll go through and discuss these issues. These will be issues that are really critical that we want to really invite in people across the political left to go have this kind of smartest minds get involved with the debates we'll have and to be able to represent these issues. So if you look at this, workers' forced pay decreases. So this is really important, and what's happening here is on an inflation basis, and inflation equals pay decrease. So I think I misspelled that. But if you go look over here at people working hard and they've got their salary, whatever their salary is going to be, and then if you look at their living costs here as the cost of rent and food and gas and everything else, as that goes up, then when their living costs are much higher, their salary needed would need to go increase at the same rate. But in practice, that does not happen. So when people go look at the last 40 years, you see the investors, you see the executives, you see everything else, corporations, as the GDP has expanded, it's grown, but the workers have not benefited from that. So here we come through, and workers have when high inflation hits, it'll basically force pay decreases for workers, which is just devastating. So we need the political left and the right debating, and we need the smartest minds on both sides at the table. So if you look at this, then what we're talking about is U.S. federal workers, and these are often people. So there's a big issue that we'll be covering, and that is so it's called U.S. unfunded obligations in the budget. That that equals that's a code word. And what that really means here is that they worked hard, their compensation had money go into their should be retirement fund, and then the money was taken out and spent by politicians elsewhere, and then what's left was so with this, the U.S. Unfunded obligations, when you see that on the budget, we'll discuss that a lot on the budget when we pour through the economics of the nation. And this number being so large, we're talking about a number that if you look at the entire GDP of the United States, it's a number that's well higher than that. If you look at all the U.S. dollars in existence, we're talking about this the unfunded obligations, which includes this and a few other things, is 10 times or way higher than that amount. And so it's real people working really hard for decades. They worked hard and they deserve the retirement that they've had their compensation pay into. When the money went out the door and that savings account is left empty with IOUs, that is this U.S. unfunded obligations. So we'll end up talking about how when money printing ends up going to refund that, if U.S. federal workers stand up and go represent themselves, then they will need to get enforce that the money goes back and pays back those IOUs, and that would come from money printing, and that causes inflation. So you can't hurt workers who've paid into it, and we would go through and discuss these issues. So the military. So the issue here, the U.S. military people that are working in the U.S. military for decades, maybe they entered retirement. Most of them have not yet entered retirement, but they need to. And then again, the same issue has happened here, where their money's gone into the savings fund. I went out the back door, spent by politicians that year. IOUs are left there, big U.S. unfunded obligations. So if you look at now Social Security, so if you look at the political left, it's very important to go look at the social programs the nation has signed off on over the last 100 years. When people signed off on them, and people in Social Security, it's really a forced retirement program. Everybody on their paycheck literally has money pulled out and put in the retirement fund. So with this, this also goes into this U.S. unfunded obligations, and so this needs to be paid back. And so we'll go through the strategic discussions when that happens. That'll happen. So Medicare, Medicaid. So, so if you look at actually all of these, what is the U.S. funded obligations? It's literally this list: Medicare, Medicaid. They're so the fund here had money taken out. So the U.S. unfunded obligations is Social Security had money taken out. Their money is now IOUs. Medicare, Medicaid. That social program has their money returned into IOUs. If you look at U.S. federal workers, IOUs, military. And so those four by far make up the U.S. unfunded obligations. There's maybe a little bit more, but really those four are the people who will be victimized if the U.S. unfunded obligations is not paid back. And so these, what we want here is people on the political left and the political right to help defend good workers, good citizens who can really get hurt by a number of issues that will be here. So we want this to happen. And it's important to get the political left's best minds engaged in this debate. So we've kind of started to go through these different issues right here. So, and this comes back into just any social programs maybe we want to be as in the future, any other social programs we have. If we don't think about them strategically on how they're funded in a reliable way, then it'll be a big impact to people. So we'll go deep dives on cryptocurrency, macroeconomics, and for the political right here, we'll come up here and we'll go discuss on the political right here. The political right will be involved in the debates, and on the political rights side of this, what's going to happen here is for the political right, there's going to be a lot of issues here that they'll care a lot about in the debates. So there's going to be stable money, and so inflation hurts people, and there's preventing malinvestments. So preventing malinvestments important. We'll go through here on preventing bubbles in business cycle. So preventing bubbles in the business cycle, and so we'll go through Austrian economics and Keynesian economics. We'll go through monetarism. So we'll have big debates on all sides of this, and we'll invite in people all across the political left, all across the political right. So alternative currencies. We'll talk about stable coins that are asset backed. We'll talk about a whole bunch of things. So we'll leave it with this on this for the political right. So the political left and the political right will have plenty of things to discuss. So if we come down here, when we go into cryptocurrency, it's necessary to go pay capital gains tax when your cryptocurrency goes up and down. In Zen Ledger is the leading product that's calculating taxes on cryptocurrency, and it's like TurboTax, but for cryptocurrency, and it just reads in all the exchanges and wallets and things, and just outputs the tax forms. So the cryptocurrency and taxes is a strategic issue. So if you go to the USDproject.com, then you will have a /taxes will be an important page, and it'll talk about taxes will be, as we work and help people prevent them have damage from inflation. This tax aspect is a strategic, interesting kind of head scratcher. So we're the USD Project. There's a lot of videos on the YouTube channel. There'll be a lot more coming. We have the main discussions on our Reddit. So we have our own subreddit here with the USD Project, and we'd love people to kind of come there and post a new thing and have discussions in there. And then we have the live podcast every Wednesday at 9:30. So we want people to go attend, and we'll go through that. We got Twitter, and we're gonna have a wiki. We have a wiki launched, and so what we do here in the USD Project is we go have a deeper discussion like I just had to her, and we'll have deeper discussions later. This was kind of a medium level discussion. So we'll have that and we'll shape the visuals, and then we crank a video out the back end of this that's a far more succinct video that goes through the visuals, and that's another video. And what we're doing is we want to have advanced thinkers involved as we have intense discussions that work out what's going to happen over the next 2-3 decades as big changes occur. And we'll map that out as advanced thinkers, and that we want you involved with that. And we'll do that in the podcast and during the wiki and the website and or Twitter and all that. And then the output is we'll output small, succinct videos that then tell the story quickly to the mass market. And we want to take people who are not involved in thinking about these issues and start to really bridge them into thinking about them. So watch how I'm about to go record the video for this topic, and this is kind of how the podcast will work. So welcome to the USD Project. This video is going to go into the political left and the political right will be pulling up on both sides of a table, having the biggest, deepest discussions economically that are here specifically to help U.S. citizens in the short term and medium term. There'll be real impacts that we need to help citizens. So this specifically will go into the political left. There's a big space here at the USD Project for the political left and smart thinkers everywhere, whether they have an economics degree or not, to pull up a chair and to go point out the biggest things we need to discuss and to help us go through those. So we'll go through strategic economic discussions. So on the political left, we'll go through really in depth on all these social programs and sustaining them economically long term. Next, protecting workers. Next, returning Social Security's money from their IRAs and their IOUs in the savings fund and getting that money returned. Next, protecting workers and their retirement fund, and then protecting U.S. federal workers and their retirement fund, and then helping workers and citizens who are hurt by pay decreases because of inflation, how that nets out. So we'll have this discussion on the political left and right. Big debates over here at the USD Project, and we'll let both sides go in depth on their topics. So this video goes into the political left side of this. So the contention point that will make big changes happen over the next 30-40 years is cryptocurrencies can greatly impact a lot of people, maybe 30 to 60% of the nation moving off to cryptocurrencies that do not allow money printing. No money printing means no monetary theory, no supporting certain social programs and so on. We'll go deep dives into this. And so we'll meet workers. These are people we're going to protect. They worked hard, they got a job that they love, they had great value in this job, and they've got a great salary. And so we'll go over a 11-year period, and what happens is inflation, when the current inflation is 3%, but official inflation is 3% or 2%, but real inflation could be a lot higher today, even 8 and 10%. When you look at the real consumer price index, as we've always measured inflation before the 1980s. But when inflation increases even more by 6%, even more, what's happening here is the cost of living, in this case is really 9% overall, 9% inflation year over year. Over this 11-year period, the cost of living will go up, and their salary does not. And that's because when companies, their employer, goes through economic stress, then they won't have the ability to increase salaries unless they're a really critical worker, like a doctor, nurse, or so on. And so this inflation will make it that people literally cannot pay their rent, buy food and gas, just the very basics. Inflation will make it that their salary will make them only be able to pay half their bills when they would not otherwise. So cryptocurrencies will put big stresses and strains on this, and everything we dive into will discuss this. So these are the issues we'll dive into: protecting workers, this inflation, and if nets out to being a pay decrease, and that's why people are saying, why aren't there uh, there's a whole bunch of discussions on this we'll go into. Next is that workers pay a huge percent of taxes when you look at the taxes of the U.S. revenue. And this includes not just income tax on April 15th, it also includes the employer's part when they pay into payroll, and employees never see that. Then the third part is employees have additional amount taken out of their side of their payroll taxes, and they see that on their payroll stub. So there's three layers. They add up to them workers on that are really working. They are the backbone of carrying the United States. And so capital gains taxes paid by the wealthy, the investors, that's their taxes. It's actually a small piece of the 7%. And then corporate and business taxes are smaller. We'll have debates and kind of hash through these numbers and tune them up, but we'll go through that. And workers, so this is that inflation. Next is there's this thing about U.S. unfunded obligations, and you'll see this on the budget, and it's a gargantuan number. Uh, you know, it could be considered way, way, way bigger than the biggest numbers in our economy. GDP, if you look at the national debt at $22 trillion, the U.S. unfunded obligations is people, various things that took money out of real workers, real citizens' pockets. It went into a savings fund where they're going to need that later. That money was taken out the door immediately in that year and replaced with IOUs in that savings fund. And so we'll go through this. So there are four big victim categories. U.S. federal workers and their retirement fund is a big one. U.S. military and their retirement fund is a really big one. So the political left and the political right need to defend these and really hash through the big discussions we'll go through. Social Security. People are forced, everybody, for the last many, many decades, to have a retirement fund, and that's Social Security. Your payroll has money pulled straight out, and you need that back in your retirement. And that's now a pile of IOUs, and that's when that money is returned, it'll end up having a lot of money printing that causes that. That causes huge inflation, and there's ways to go kind of solve this, but there'll be radical changes in our country. So Medicare and Medicaid, and really think of U.S. social programs. So these are the four big victim classes of these U.S. unfunded obligations, and this is something that's as big as the entire national debt, not just the deficit, the entire national debt. The financial numbers of these things are just as big, and so a big area of people that get hurt. So the political right, they will also love being in the USD project and having the debates. When you look at them, they care about stable money, alternative currencies, preventing malinvestment, preventing bubbles in the business cycle that have no reason to be created but could be and would be, and inflation hurting real people. So, Zen Ledger is, cryptocurrency that causes cryptocurrency taxes to be paid, because when you make gains of the value of cryptocurrency going up, you got capital gains, you got to get those paid. That actually is an interesting strategic discussion that we debate a lot, and that'll end up being about when we're trying to help you with inflation, in sometimes not printing money in certain cases to help people. And then taxes, is that a problem or not? Will taxes go away? We'll have a lot of discussions on the taxes. And so Zen Ledger is interesting to look at, the leading product in cryptocurrency taxes, and it just reads in exchanges and crypto wallets and just calculates the cryptocurrency taxes and outputs forms you insert straight in your taxes. So Zen Ledger, and going to the USDproject.com/taxes has an interesting strategic discussion to go into. So come to the USD Project and sign up. That every 2 weeks you'll get an email packet, and that'll be part of the story that'll unfold. And today's story was the political left has a critical field to give input on in part of the USD project. Our YouTube channel is full of videos. Our website's full of content. Please tweet with us on Twitter at USD Project. And Reddit is where we want discussions to happen. So go into Reddit. We have our own subreddit. Post there, discuss with us. And this is the USD Project. And this is our topic on the political left, as that side has a political seat at the table. Thank you very much. So that is how we go off and have the podcast. And today we went through and we did this for the political left. In the next podcast, we're going to go into cryptocurrency for the cryptocurrency community. So we'll go through why it's really important for them to have their seat at the table. And with their seat at the table, it'll go through stable coins, it'll go through Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin category is really the government can't confiscate, government can't block it, government can't regulate it. When it comes to Bitcoin, EOS, and Ethereum, then and some privacy coins, those coins will be one category. We'll have a big discussion and why that community needs to help support the USD project and get the word out. Then we'll go through deep dives into stable coins. We'll go a deep dive into asset-backed coins and with real estate asset-backed or gold or otherwise. So come on over to the USD project and learn a lot more about us. This is Brian Starbuck and signing off. Thank you very much and have a great day.